My daughter-in-law said I'd last 2 days without them, so I took back the thing they got from me. Allison, that's my name. I was 68 when I moved into my son's house, my Bruce. Though Bruce never once called it my home, I had broken my hip the year before and needed a few months of help while I learned to walk without wincing. He agreed reluctantly, and Brianna agreed even less. I could feel it in the way she handed me plates like they were loaned privileges, and in the way Bruce avoided my eyes whenever he asked for more money for his never-ending startup. I had already poured thousands into that sinking ship, trying to believe my son still had some direction left in him. But somewhere along the way, helping him turned into enabling him, and gratitude turned into resentment. Each morning began the same. I shuffled into the kitchen quietly, leaning on the counter until the stiffness in my hip eased. Bruce would glance up from his coffee and say, "Mom, you're a walking bill. You drain this house every day." The words never softened with repetition. They landed like small stones thrown at a window already cracked. Brianna, always ready to sharpen the blow, added, "I swear, your footsteps alone raise the heating bill. Old people should disappear quietly. Why are you still here?" She said it with a smile, like she was sharing a joke everyone else understood. The worst part wasn't the insults. It was the ease with which they came. As if speaking to me with contempt had become a shared language between them. A private dialect built from irritation and blame. My granddaughter, little Tessa, was the only warmth in that house. She'd hug me each afternoon after school and whisper, "Grandma, I'm glad you're here." But even that sparked Brianna's bitterness. She accused me of poisoning her with sentimental nonsense, simply because I told Tessa that happiness didn't come from new toys. And Bruce, well, he never forgave me for refusing to let him use the old Harborview house as collateral for a gambling loan. I had worked 2 jobs for decades to keep that house after my husband died, and he called it selfish that I wouldn't hand it over so he could chase another dream. Everything I ever did became something they twisted into an insult. Even my years running the community kitchen for the homeless embarrassed him. He called it a low-class job and acted as if the good I did stained his reputation. Around 200 words ago, you may have felt the same tightening dread that lived in my chest every morning. And if you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. The day everything snapped started much like the others. I was stirring oatmeal when Brianna set her mug down with enough force to splash coffee onto the counter. She didn't wipe it. She looked straight at me and said, "You wouldn't last 2 days without us. 2 days, and you'd come crawling back." Her voice was light but laced with venom, the kind that sticks to the skin. Bruce chuckled, actually chuckled, and said, "Let her try. Maybe it'll finally teach her who she really needs." I felt something shift inside me. Not anger yet, just a recognition that the people I had sacrificed for no longer saw me as family, just as a cost they wanted to eliminate. I tried to leave the kitchen quietly, but Brianna wasn't finished. She grabbed my small suitcase, the one I kept by the door with my medication, and tossed it onto the porch. The sound echoed like a door slamming in my chest. "This house is for people who contribute," she said, "not for dead weight." Bruce stood with his arms crossed. "Mom, go. Figure your life out. My life." As if I hadn't spent most of it holding him together. For a moment I couldn't speak. I saw Tessa at the top of the stairs, her small hands clinging to the railing, fear widening her eyes. I forced a smile for her, weak but steady, then turned back to the 2 people who had decided I was disposable. I said nothing. Some battles aren't worth the breath they steal. I picked up my suitcase, my bottle of pills, my ID, and walked out into the cold. The door shut behind me before I reached the steps. They didn't watch me leave. At the bus stop, I finally let my hands tremble. I rented a cheap room for 2 nights, with what little I had left, and sat on the edge of the stiff bed, trying to gather the broken pieces of myself. I told myself I would use the time to think, to breathe, to decide my next move. But somewhere deep down, beneath the hurt and the humiliation, there was a truth I hadn't recognized yet. They hadn't just thrown me out. They had already taken something from me long before I walked out that door. And soon, I would learn exactly what. They would take my identity, People often say resentment grows slowly, like mold in a forgotten corner. But in my case, it didn't grow, it was built, brick by brick, year by year, and always with my own sacrifices as the foundation they stood on, while they blamed me for the view. After my husband died in a logging accident, Bruce was only 6. His world collapsed in one afternoon, and so did mine, but mothers don't get to fall apart the way children do. I took the first jobs that would have me cooking at the church during the mornings and coordinating meals at the community kitchen at night. There were winters when I slept sitting up at the dining table because stopping meant surrendering to grief, and surrender was a luxury I could not afford. When Bruce was 8 and struck with pneumonia, I stayed awake for 72 hours. I held his hand while he coughed and wheezed, pacing the floor to keep him breathing steadily, praying over every ragged inhale. He never remembered that part. Children rarely do. But I remember every hour of it, every fevered shiver, every whispered plea that he not be taken from me too. Years later, when college seemed out of reach, I sold my wedding ring, my last piece of the man I'd love to pay his tuition deposit. I told him it was time to build a future. I did not realize he would spend the rest of his life insisting that I had failed to build it for him. As Bruce grew older, something in him hardened. He looked at his classmates with new cars, expensive sneakers, lavish spring breaks, and he saw his own childhood not as a story of endurance, but as a collection of losses. He took my frugality, the survival skill that fed us, clothed us, kept heat in the house, and rewrote it as laziness. If you worked harder, he said once, I wouldn't have grown up poor. I stood there, listening to the child I had bled my youth for, and realized he had mistaken sacrifice for inadequacy. My efforts had erased the evidence of struggle so well that he believed the struggle itself had been optional. Then came Brianna. She arrived with bright lipstick, expensive handbags, and a smile sharp enough to slice through any room. At first, she pretended to like me, calling me Mom, bringing over candles, offering help in sugary tones. But sweetness was only bait. The night after their wedding, I overheard her telling Bruce, Your mom is a relic. She smells like poverty. The words were whispered, but my heart heard them clearly. Where I saw my community work as dignity, she saw disgrace. She mocked the soup kitchen, calling it a poor woman's hobby, and nudged Bruce to distance himself from it, from me, from everything that reminded her of modest living. She worshipped appearances, status, acquisition. I threatened all of that simply by existing. The deeper truth, the one neither of them ever said out loud, was simpler. I reminded them of what they weren't. I had spent my life giving, and they had spent theirs taking. My endurance exposed their entitlement. My sacrifices highlighted their selfishness. My resilience made their excuses look thin. But beneath the emotional contempt lay something colder, a financial hunger neither of them bothered to disguise. The house in Harbor View, the one my husband's parents left us, had become Bruce's obsession. He saw it as a ladder he deserved to climb, not a legacy I fought to keep. To him, signing it over wasn't a decision, it was an obligation, and refusing him wasn't self-preservation, it was betrayal. He talked about changing his life, but what he meant was gambling more comfortably. Brianna talked about optimizing assets, but what she meant was inheriting something she hadn't earned. In their minds, my survival was an inconvenience, delaying their plans. I started to understand that their cruelty wasn't random. It had purpose. Every jab, every insult, every reminder that I was a burden wore down my defenses, piece by piece. If you push someone low enough, you expect them to hand over everything just to avoid more pain. In quieter moments, when the house finally stopped echoing with their contempt, I would sit on the edge of a borrowed bed and wonder when exactly love had turned into liability. Was it when Bruce realized I had nothing left to give, or was it when he realized I still had something he wanted? What hurt most was not the hatred itself, it was the fact that it had never been earned. The things they resented me for were the very things that had held their lives together. The nights I worked instead of sleeping, the meals I cooked instead of eating, the warmth I kept in the house, even when I shivered in my coat to save on fuel. They weren't angry at my failures, they were angry at my strength, because my strength reflected their lack of it, and my sacrifices illuminated the places where they had chosen comfort over effort. entitlement over gratitude, and shortcuts over character. By the time Brianna threw my suitcase onto the porch, the truth had crystallized fully. They didn't hate me for who I was. They hated me for everything they knew they would never become. And somewhere beneath that resentment was a deeper motive, a quieter one, waiting for its reveal. I just hadn't discovered it yet, but I would, soon, with devastating clarity. By the time 24 hours had passed since Brianna threw my suitcase onto the porch, the silence around me felt unfamiliar, almost too gentle. The worn little motel room I had rented smelled faintly of bleach and damp carpet, but at least no one barked orders at me. I woke slowly, stiff from the thin mattress, and told myself today would be practical. Refill my medication, buy groceries for 2 days, and figure out what came next. I walked into the pharmacy holding my Medicare card the way someone might hold a lifeline. My hips ached in the cold, but I felt a small thread of confidence. I had survived worse. I could survive this too. The pharmacist scanned my card, frowned, scanned it again, then typed something rapidly. She glanced up at me with cautious professionalism. "Ma'am, your Medicare coverage is inactive." I blinked, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something sensible. "Inactive? It was fine last month. There must be a mistake." She shook her head. "The system shows your plan was terminated. I can sell you the medication at full price, but it's expensive." Full price was more than I had in my purse. More than I had anywhere, I would soon realize. I thanked her quietly and stepped outside, the wind slicing through my coat. My phone buzzed with a low balance alert. For a moment I thought it was a delayed message, something from yesterday still catching up. Then I opened my banking app. Available funds, $0. My throat tightened. I refreshed the screen. Still zero. I checked my savings. Zero. My eyes stung, but not from the wind this time. I felt something inside me begin to crumble, slowly, deliberately, as if someone had been chiseling away pieces of my life while I slept. I walked to the nearest Social Security Administration office because I needed answers, and because part of me still believed this was a clerical error, an inconvenience, nothing more. I waited almost an hour before a woman in a navy sweater called my name. Her voice was kind, but her expression shifted the moment she pulled up my record. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "our system shows you changed beneficiaries last week." My heartbeat stumbled. I didn't change anything. She turned the monitor toward me. There it was in bold text. "New beneficiary, Bruce Ridgway." For a moment, the room spun not dramatically, just a slow, nauseating tilt, as though reality had suddenly been nudged out of place. The woman continued. "It also shows you updated your payee information and authorized full transfer rights to your son." "No," I whispered. "I never signed anything." She hesitated, then slipped a printed packet across the desk. These forms were submitted with signature confirmation. I stared down at the page. My signature stared back. The loops were identical, the slant of the letters perfect. Even the small tremor in the A of Allison, the one my hand had developed after the hip fracture, had been replicated. "That's not me," I said, though the words barely made it through my tightening throat. "That is not my signature. We also received video verification," the woman added softly. "A Face ID recording from your son's device." "Face ID?" My voice cracked. "What does that mean?" She tapped a key and a short clip opened on her screen. A face filled the frame. My face, but the lighting was odd, like it came from a computer screen. The background was blurred in a way that did not match any room I had ever been in, and my voice spoke with a flatness that didn't sound like me at all. "I authorized the beneficiary changes," the video me said. "Transfer all benefits to my son." My stomach flipped. That wasn't real. Not the lighting, not the voice, not the stiffness of the expressions. It was me, but not me. A digital puppet. I covered my mouth with my hand. "That's a fake. Someone edited that, or generated it." The woman lowered her voice. "Ma'am, deep fake identity fraud has been increasing. It is possible your likeness was manipulated, but we still need to file a formal report before we can freeze your account." In that moment, I understood something else. This wasn't just someone pretending to be me. This was someone who had rehearsed being me, Someone who had studied my face, my voice, my habits. Someone inside my own house. Deepfake. The word hit me harder than the cold air outside. Brianna worked in digital branding. She spent hours on her phone editing videos, using face swap apps, filters, voice modifiers. She once joked she could make a cardboard box look like a celebrity. I had never imagined she would use those tools on me. But I saw it now, the ease with which she handled my phone whenever she helped me navigate apps. The questions she asked about my signature, the way she recorded me reading bedtime stories to Tessa, angling her phone too deliberately. All the pieces clicked together with a sickening snap. They hadn't just wanted me out of the house. They had taken my money, my benefits, my legal identity. The woman handed me a temporary form for reporting fraud. My hands shook as I signed, not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, but because I was finally beginning to understand what Bruce and Brianna had done. They had prepared for my disappearance long before they forced me out. And for the first time since leaving their house, a new thought, sharp as glass, cut through my fear. If they could steal my identity so perfectly, what else were they planning to erase? I returned to the motel after the nightmare at the Social Security office, feeling hollowed out, as if someone had scooped out the insides of my life and left the shell standing only out of habit. I sat on the edge of the sagging bed, holding the fraud report form in my lap, trying to imagine how Bruce and Brianna had justified doing this to me. Maybe they did not justify it at all. Maybe, to them, I had stopped being a person the moment I moved into their house. When the front desk clerk handed me my mail, a small stack she had collected since yesterday, I felt a flicker of dread before I even saw the return address. On top was an official envelope from the IRS, the kind no one wants to see. My name printed neatly, my motel room number handwritten in pen. For a moment, I debated waiting until morning to open it, but the truth was already pacing behind my ribs. Impatient, inside was a notice congratulating me on receiving a large disbursement connected to a reverse mortgage loan. I reread the line 3 times because the words refused to make sense. Reverse mortgage. I had never applied for such a thing. I barely understood how they worked. My lungs tightened as I flipped to the details. Initial disbursement amount, $280,000. Funds transferred to account ending in 4,927. That was my checking account. The same one that now showed a balance of 0. A humming started in my ears. I forced myself to keep reading. Subsequent wire transfer authorized by the borrower. Funds withdrawn within 24 hours. The borrower, me, at least according to their paperwork. The IRS letter included a reference number for the lender, a financial services company specializing in online reverse mortgages. Reverse mortgages. I remembered commercials playing in the background of the Ridgeway living room, elderly homeowners smiling as they explained how they had unlocked their home equity without selling. Bruce always scoffed, saying, "Stupid people give up real property for crumbs," but Brianna had listened with unsettling interest. The letter's last page showed a signature, my signature, approving the loan. And just like the forged forms at Social Security, it was flawless, down to the identical tremor in the cross of the T. I felt my hand drift to my chest. Harbor View. My husband and I had rebuilt that house after the fire, plank by plank, window by window. Every board held a memory. It was the last place he stood alive, and they had mortgaged it, behind my back, using my identity, using my husband's memory as collateral. A cold, bitter clarity settled over me. Brianna had asked casually last winter, "Do you ever update your passport? You know, just in case you want to travel one day." I had handed her my old passport without thinking so she could help me renew online, but she returned it saying the system was down. At the time, I believed her. I wanted to believe the best. Now I saw the truth. The old passport had served its purpose. It gave her all the information she needed. Reverse mortgages required only ID documents, a few tax forms, and a verification video call. A verification video call she had faked with deepfake tech, using my face. I thought I had hit my threshold of shock for the day. But the next line of the IRS notice cut deeper than anything before it. Should the borrower die or vacate the property, full ownership transfers to the lender. Vacate the property. Like being kicked out. or disappearing, or dying. My breath caught in my throat. That was the moment I understood the true shape of their plan. The reverse mortgage wasn't the goal. It was step one. They had drained the money immediately because they never intended for me to see it. And the house, my last anchor to the life I built, would automatically belong to the lender once I vacated. Brianna's voice echoed in my memory, sharp as broken glass. Old people should disappear quietly. I pressed my hand over my mouth as the room blurred. Bruce and Brianna had not simply stolen from me. They had weaponized the law around my death. They had mortgaged my home, knowing that if I vanished, if they ensured I vanished, the lender would cleanly take the property. No question asked, no inheritance fight, no paper trail pointing back to them. They had planned a world where I died, owing a debt I never agreed to. I felt my legs give way, and I slid down the side of the bed to the floor. My breath came shallow and fast. A reverse mortgage, a forged identity, a stolen pension. This wasn't mischief or greed or carelessness. This was a blueprint for erasing me completely. And the most terrifying part was how close they had already come. Bruce's taunt replayed in my mind, cruel and casual. Go figure your life out, Mom. But now I understood the truth. They had already figured it out for me, and it ended with me gone. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the forged signature, the drained bank account, the notice claiming I had borrowed $280,000 I had never touched. By dawn, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold a cup of water. That was when my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. Normally, I ignored unknown calls, but something in me whispered to answer. Mrs. Allison Green, a woman asked. Her voice held a firmness I recognized from people who navigate crises for a living. Yes, I managed. This is Special Agent Mara Kingsley with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. I believe you filed an identity theft report late last night. I felt my breath catch. I had only filled out the initial online form because a clerk suggested it, not expecting anyone to respond so quickly. I did, I whispered. But I do not know if I did it right. You did, she said. And your name? It rang a bell. Do you have a moment to talk? I hesitated. I suppose so. Good, she said, because I think we've met before. I frowned. I'm sorry, dear. I don't recall. You wouldn't, she interrupted gently. I was 10. You used to serve meals at the Harborview Community Kitchen. You always put extra cornbread on my plate, because you knew I'd save half for my little brother. My heart paused, tripping over memory. A thin girl with tangled hair, clutching 2 paper plates. A child who didn't speak unless spoken to, but whose eyes carried too much hunger for someone her age. Mara, I whispered. Sweetheart, is that really you? Yes. Ma'am, she said softly, but her tone sharpened again with purpose. And I'm here because what happened to you isn't normal. It isn't random. It's coordinated fraud. My chest tightened. I thought maybe I was overreacting. No, she said, I've already pulled your preliminary file. Mrs. Green, what was done to you required planning, technical access, and intimate knowledge of your life. This is not a stranger. This is someone who knows you well. That truth landed heavy, but not surprising. Bruce and Brianna, I said quietly. Mara exhaled, as if she had hoped I wouldn't say it, but already expected it. I want you to come down to the field office. Bring every letter, screenshot, and document you have. I'll meet you personally. 2 hours later, I sat across from her in a windowless interview room as she studied each page I handed her. She examined the reverse mortgage paperwork, the deepfake verification, the forged signature, the IRS notice, the zeroed-out bank account. When she reached the part showing the mortgage had been initiated from an IP address registered to Bruce's house, she let out a low whistle. Missus Green, she said, this isn't theft. What is it then? I asked. She folded her hands, leaning in. This is organized financial exploitation. A full identity takeover. In our system, it qualifies as elder fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy. And the people orchestrating it are your own family. I swallowed, feeling that word family fracture inside me. Can anything be done? Oh, absolutely, she said, voice firm with professional certainty. But we need proof of intent, and they're already sloppy. If we push at the right angle, they'll reveal everything. She pulled out a small black device, the size of a lipstick tube. This is a body cam, she said. You'll pin it inside your cardigan. Completely legal. It uploads automatically to our secure cloud. I stared at it. You want me to go? Back? To their house? No, she said, not to live. To confront them, but indirectly. I need you to sound vulnerable, desperate. People like your daughter-in-law reveal their crimes when they believe the victim is defeated. I almost laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. She already thinks that. Good, Mara said. Then the camera will catch everything. What do you want me to say? You'll knock on the door, Mara said, her tone calm and strategic. Tell them you're reconsidering. That you want to come back home. That you're scared, confused, and unable to manage alone. I stiffened. I don't want them thinking I need them. I know, she replied gently. But this isn't about pride. It's about evidence. People who steal from family often brag when they believe the power is theirs. I need them talking. I breathed slowly. And while this happens, what will you be doing? Monitoring every movement on their accounts, she said. Watching for additional transfers, forged documents, digital footprints. I'll have eyes on them in real time. My hands shook again, not from fear, but from the jarring sensation of hope. Agent Kingsley, I whispered, my voice trembling. Why are you helping me personally? Her expression softened. You gave me food when no one else did, she said. You treated me like I mattered. Now it's my turn. For a moment, my eyes burned hot, but I blinked the tears away. I had no space left for weakness. Mara placed a reassuring hand on mine. You're not alone in this, Allison. I nodded slowly, letting the weight of the coming confrontation settle in, because she was right. If I stayed silent, my life would be stolen clean. And if I surrendered, Tessa, the only innocent soul left in that poisoned house, would be their next target. I closed my fingers around the body cam. It ends with me, I said, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt steady. I stood on the porch with my body trembling just enough to seem believable. The cold evening air bit through my sleeves, but it was nothing compared to the chill settling in my bones from the reality of why I was here. Under my cardigan, the small body cam pressed lightly against my chest, humming softly as it recorded. Mara was already monitoring from the surveillance van parked 2 streets away. All I had to do was knock. My knuckles barely touched the door when it swung open. Brianna stood there with a smile so wide and poisonous it almost looked painful. Well, she said, crossing her arms. Look who crawled back. I lowered my gaze, as Mara instructed. I just need a place to stay. I cannot manage on my own. Behind her, Bruce snorted. Of course you can't, Mom. You're not built for independence. You're built for needing us. I forced a weak breath. Please, just for a few days. They exchanged a look, one of triumph, not hesitation. Then Brianna stepped aside. Fine, come in. Wipe your feet first. You always track in dirt. I walked inside, moving slow, letting my shoulders sag, letting them think their victory was complete. Bruce shut the door behind me with a smug click. So, he said, rubbing his hands together like someone preparing a performance. You ready to be honest this time? I blinked. About what? Brianna laughed. About how you cannot survive without us. About how you owe us everything. Bruce leaned against the counter, smirking. Face it, Mom. One signature and you became irrelevant. My chest tightened, but I kept my expression small and frightened. What signature? Oh, stop pretending, he said impatiently. The reverse mortgage, the one that unlocked $280,000. You're welcome, by the way. I shook my head. I never signed anything. And that, Brianna said sweetly, tapping my cheek with one red fingernail, is the beauty of technology. Your face is mine to use, Allison. She pulled out her phone and waved the screen in front of me. For a split second, I saw my own face, my eyes, my mouth, speaking words I had never said. My stomach flipped, but I willed myself to stay still. Deep fakes are just the beginning, she continued proudly. The world believes what it sees, and it saw you approving every transfer. Bruce chimed in. grinning. Even the Social Security changes. It all went through beautifully. The government literally thinks I'm your legal beneficiary now. My pulse thudded. Every word they spoke fed directly into Mara's secure system. Every confession was a nail in the coffin they'd built for themselves. I swallowed hard. But why take everything? Why ruin me like this? Bruce shrugged. You were holding us back. You always have. You kept that Harborview house to yourself. And for what? Sentiment? That's not value. That's dead weight. Brianna stepped closer, her voice lowering into something colder. And besides, once the mortgage company takes the house after you pass away, it's a win-win. We don't have to maintain anything. We get sympathy, and we get to finally start our lives without your shadow choking the air. I felt a tremor of real anger, hot, sharp, almost incontrollable, but I forced it down. Not yet. Then Brianna said the thing that nearly made me forget the plan entirely. And after you disappear, she said casually, we're sending Tessa to live with my sister in New Hampshire. She's been wanting a child for years. And frankly, I am tired of pretending to like that kid. I realized then that they were not simply removing me from their lives. They were redesigning their entire future without any trace of the family that built them. My breath stopped. What? Bruce rolled his eyes. Come on, Mom. You didn't think we'd keep her, did you? We're starting fresh. No obligations. She'll be better off, Brianna added. My sister knows how to raise children properly, not with charity values and poor people morals. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. My hands tightened at my sides. My vision blurred at the edges. They weren't just planning to erase me, they were planning to erase her entire life. Bruce misread my expression and snorted. Look at her. She can't even process it. I told you she'd fold. Brianna laughed. She's folding right now. It's adorable, really. I lifted my head slowly. So everything you've done was intentional? The house, the accounts, the mortgage, the Social Security. Bruce shrugged. Yeah, we planned it. Took months. So what? And you feel no guilt? Guilt? Brianna scoffed. Guilt is for failures. We're building our future. A small green light blinked twice beneath my sweater, the signal from the body cam app. Mara had everything. I let my shoulders straighten just a little. Thank you, I said quietly. Bruce frowned. For what? For telling me the truth. Before he could speak, the front door burst open. Agents flooded the living room, shouting commands, guns drawn but steady. Brianna screamed. Bruce froze with his hands half raised, eyes wide and wild. Bruce Ridgway and Brianna Ridgway. The lead agent barked. You are under arrest for aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, elder exploitation, conspiracy, and federal mortgage fraud. Brianna shrieked. She set us up. That old woman tricked us. I finally stood at my full height. No, I said, my voice steady. You revealed yourselves. Bruce stared at me like he had never seen me before. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of losing money, but of losing control. Agents cuffed them both, dragging them toward the door as they screamed accusations that no one believed. And I stood in the middle of the living room, heart pounding, breath shaking, but unbroken. They said I wouldn't last 2 days without them, but they hadn't lasted one night against the truth. The federal courthouse in Boston felt colder than any winter I had ever lived through. Not because of the weather, but because justice has a kind of chill to it, a sharpened edge that slices through pretense. Reporters filled the hallway like crows waiting for a feast. When they whispered my name, some with sympathy, some with morbid fascination, I kept my chin steady. I had survived worse than eyes on me. Bruce and Brianna were brought in wearing orange jumpsuits, shackled at the wrists and ankles. Brianna's hair was unwashed, pulled into a tight knot that made her look older than her 40 years. Bruce refused to look at me, jaw clenched so hard a vein pulsed in his temple. He still thought he was the victim. He still thought the world owed him something. The judge entered, commanding the courtroom with the kind of authority that could silence a hurricane. After the charges were read, wire fraud, identity theft, mortgage fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy, Bruce shifted, as if each word added weight to his chains. The prosecution began with precision sharp enough to draw blood. They projected 2 videos on the courtroom screen. The real footage, a hidden camera recording of Brianna bragging. "Your face is mine to use, Allison." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the judge raised his brows. Next came the IP logs. A large digital map lit up on the screen, every login, every transfer, every form submitted, all originating from the Ridgeway home, all from Brianna's laptop, Bruce's phone, their Wi-Fi network. Then came the bank records. The $280,000 wired out of my account within 20 minutes of the mortgage hitting. The money funneled into one of Bruce's shell accounts.